Yo, 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 yo. How's everybody doing? Class has started. Everybody chill. Okay, so how's everybody doing? Hope everybody's having a good week. Doing their thing. Hopefully I'm loud enough here. Okay. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about drum synthesis, and I did actually have today lined up for like battery 4 and stuff, but I feel like this is actually more beneficial to people just in general, just because a lot of people ask specifically about drum synthesis, so I figured to really get people familiar with it, it's going to take a little bit more than just a couple classes on it. So we're gonna start there. Hold up, 1 sec. All right, that's probably better, right? Right about here. Cool. Really need like a second engineer. Okay, so I have this little outline here just about drum synthesis today. And again, we're going to be talking about this a lot more in 110 with both classes pretty much. And we're not going to get super deep in all these crazy routings. We're going to pretty much recreate them, but we're also going to talk about pretty much what they all mean, because this stuff is actually a little bit confusing. Actually, not a little bit, but really confusing. Yeah, at some point, if I can get mods working on my Streamlabs, that'd be super sick. I know a lot of other streamers actually have that. All right, so let's start at the top here. So first few pages here are things that I wrote, and then the rest is going to be highlighted pieces from Sound on Sound. And they have like a little tutorial about pretty much creating not like emulations, but actually how to recreate the full signal flow of a TR-909 and a TR-808. So I think they're really interesting, definitely very beneficial to know. When I started looking into this stuff, it actually kind of opened my mind to a lot of different possibilities with specifically processing drums and also the different pieces that it kind of takes to actually create these physical models, because this is pretty much what we're going to be talking about today, is physical modeling. And that's very relevant to sampling, because this is the kind of shit that if you want to go and create like a really authentic sample pack, not just clips of other people's samples you're probably using in your tracks inside of your sample packs. I know a lot of people do that. And then there's a lot of people that just straight up design sounds just for a sample pack. Aleph is one person who does a lot of that, and I highly respect all of his sample packs. And so does Zach Countryman. So all that stuff is synthesized. Aleph definitely does a lot of like sample stacking, and I really like his snares and stuff, and a lot of people agree on that. Pretty sure most of the people in the Nero scene have Aleph sample pack and kind of use that for a lot of different things. Yeah, Aleph is the god. Alright, so yeah, this class is geared to blend the concepts we've been talking about between synthesis and sampling and shit. So you should know what an envelope is, you should know what modulation means, you should know what all that stuff means up until this point. If you're still confused on that stuff, I guess just ask questions. Chat is there. I have chat up in 2 spots now, just so I can monitor everything. So yeah, just let me know if you're confused at any point while I'm here explaining shit. Okay, so just talked about that, like what it's really all about. All right, so what is physical modeling? We kind of talked a little bit about what that means, and Really what it means is you have some type of surface that's being struck by something. So the thing that it's striking is called the exciter. So mallet, beater, stick, pick, or plectrum. It's called plectrum in a lot of different physical modeling synths because there's not just one type of pick. It's like a kodo or a bunch of other like Japanese, Middle Eastern instruments have different types of picks. A lot of like finger picks and just a bunch of other things, that actually create a different timbre just because of the way they're made. Yeah. And then that exciter strikes a surface. So the surface is the drum head, the material of the drum head, either the instrument body or some type of emulated metal or glass material. So glass and metal are kind of like filter banks. So it will comb through the signal and then give you one shape that it's combing it into. So if you ever wondered how does corpus work or what does collision do, that's what they do. And this is how they do it. You have some type of emulated strike or exciter. And a lot of those big physical modeling synths, it's like different convolved versions of noise. So we've talked about convolution as well. It's a type of spectral resynthesis. So spectral means it's filtering the sound. So it's taking white noise, filtering that with the timbre of a mallet, and then resonating the surface with that. So we're not going to talk too deep about that specific thing today. I mean, we are going to talk about it, but it's important that you understand that you need these two pieces in order to create a drum in the real world. So you have to use those two pieces in the digital world too. So you have to emulate what exists in real life in order for it to actually create the type of sound that you're going for. If you don't, you're going to be kind of going in circles for a while. Because there's a couple places to start we're going to talk about, which is all this stuff right here. But if you don't understand this, then you won't really know where to start experimenting and how you can actually blend multiple different styles of physical modeling together. Because in a TR-808 and 909, both for kick, snare, and cymbal modules, they're using cost-effective workarounds for a lot of that stuff. So they end up having to do a lot of things that are a little bit weird, but ended up giving it a very unique sound. So, like, when people are looking for that kind of emulation, they're actually looking for all of it, not just the ultimate sound. They want the signal flow and the type of processing that they're doing in order to get sounds. So like today, we're going to talk about something called wave folding. And wave folding is a type of wave shaping that Roland used for both the 808, 909, and for the SH101 for a lot of like synthesis, just for the actual like oscillators of say like the snare and the kick, because they were actually limited to a certain type of oscillator for the time. And before a certain period, it was actually expensive to have an actual sine wave generated in your synth. So if you don't have that, then you have to make a workaround. So in general, before I say like DCO era, DCO, we talked about what that means is digitally controlled oscillator, which means they're using DSP in order to calculate the curve of an oscillation, which that's like Dave Smith instruments and the Prophet 8. So before that era, it was really expensive to create sine waves. So they end up having to use square waves and sawtooth waves and then wavefold those into what is kind of like a sine wave, similar to the way a Moog creates a subbass. And to Ori's question, is that like Melda Productions Transform plugin? Similar. So that, what he's talking about is a convolver, and it's kind of like what exists inside of Trash. Also, Synaptic Morph does the same thing, as well as the AET Morph filter. Yeah, so that just kind of like allows you to comb the frequencies in like this perfectly shaped kind of like I guess, impulse response. If we switch to a sine wave economy, yo, in Sine God's world, it's always been, sine wave economy. And what's great is it always is running, man. Yo, that oscillator is never off, man. Sine God, yo, man. In the beginning, there was his sound, and it was like the deepest 808 that ever existed, and ripped a black hole in the space-time continuum. All right. Anyways, so you really got to understand, like, how that stuff is created, because, we're going to talk about like wave folding and wave shaping pretty soon here in processing class with Trash and with Wave Shaper and Ableton. All of them work the same. They're all just kind of like giving you different control of the wave shape itself. So really understanding what sinoid folds are and how to inject harmonics into your sound and use sine shaping effectively. I'm sure everybody can just run a bandpass filter through a sine shaper and then kind of make some squiggles. But there's a lot of other ways to do shit, so we'll end up talking about that a little bit as well. All right, so, you really want to be able to like conceptualize a drum. If you can't not everybody can visualize, but if you know how to look and then compare one to one, then you can kind of like make the deduction that this is supposed to be this length, have this type of timbre, it's supposed to sound this deep. So in a space, have this type of strike, transient length. So this is applicable to drums, but say if you're making a violin, then you would have to create the depth and wood content of that violin in order to actually create from scratch, synthesize, not record and resample, that type of stuff. So with drum synthesis specifically, I feel like it's the most usable for this, because you can sit down for a day, synthesize, a few different patches of kicks, and then just keep on recording them and just get a whole little library of kicks that you just generated, from one patch, and then just have kind of different variations of that. So really that's where you want to be with synthesizing your own drums, because when I go and sit down to make a track, I'm not sitting there in Serum synthesizing my kick just to get my kick started. If I'm in that kind of mood, honestly, I only do that shit if I'm uninspired, because I have nothing else to really kind of aim for in my track, so I'll just go and synthesize some percussion. And that's kind of a good spot to go to if you're ever uninspired while making your music. But yeah, it's not really a workflow effective technique, so just keep that in mind. All right, so transient length, that means the full envelope. So we've already talked about that both in both compressor days, because that's huge with compressing like the transient. It's knowing how long the actual transient of a snare is. So you can apply that knowledge to here as well, because now you're applying that to the length of an amplitude envelope. So whenever you're creating an amplitude envelope inside of a drum, it's going to have no sustain, and the decay is actually going to be how the drum plays over time. And then we just talked about timbre and space. So space is also going to be convolution, could also be reverb. I have a few like patches I built that are, actual cymbal patches from like the 909 stuff. And it takes a minute to actually synthesize like a real 909 cymbal, because it's not just noise, it's a lot of other stuff. But, it's actually pretty cool. And I synthesized a lot of percussion just out of those concepts alone. But that's just me, I guess. All right, so now let's kind of like talk about something that's a little bit more, I guess, usable right now, because we're going to start messing with some shit in like a second here. But I kind of want to jump into like where I kind of came from with like figuring out like how to use pitch envelopes and stuff. And that's really just understanding how it should work from a hyper perspective, where you're looking at something that's happening really quickly, really slowly. So if you're trying to understand, like, say, how an actual synthesizer works, not just Serum or anything like that, like, it's going to take a while, and you got to sit down and digest it slowly. You can't just pick up a synth, expect to know it all, and just move like that. I'm sure there's a ton of other producers, and I hear Kill the Noise kind of talk about this stuff a lot. And yeah, so it's like you can know a lot of stuff about synthesis, but a lot of people just kind of know which knobs to twist and kind of know where to start with that. And don't really know too much about what's happening behind the hood or even why certain things do what they do. It just, they know they do that, so then they go to that. But yeah, so anyways. So where I'm coming from with that is looking at a symbol in a high-speed camera, you can kind of see that pretty much these waveforms that are generated from a cymbal or a snare, when it strikes it, it vibrates or waves really, really quickly. My fucking recommended. H3 and Cody Co. All right, so this is just one strike, and he's also playing like a paradiddle, which is a really fast marching band kind of like rhythm, which is fast, super fast. So in between each of these strikes, whenever this thing goes up and down the surface, that's one waveform. That's being pinged. That's a oscillator pinging a filter. So, that's pretty much, there's better versions of this, and you can really see it on the cymbal. But that's pretty much what happens. Anytime you're trying to create a strike, anytime you're trying to create a strike on a cymbal, it's always going to be a fast pitch envelope in order to create this effect. So the fast pitch envelope that you put onto an oscillator is the stick striking the cymbal. And then how it decays over time is how fast this cymbal takes to stop vibrating. So a cymbal obviously is going to last for a minute. But a snare, depending on its pitch, if it's a really high tuned snare, like a gospel snare or something like that, it's going to be tuned really, really high. Also be in pitch. So it's actually going to decay really quickly. And that's something that's ideal for a lot of like jazz drummers and metal drummers. Metal drummers and jazz drummers share the same snare. It's 100% truth. This is the crack you can get out of a jazz drum, like a pork pie drum or anything like that. It's just pretty gnar. Yeah, Kill the Noise is definitely one of the goats. But yeah, he also, is very humble, and so I appreciate that with people. Where it's like, it's not trying to push a certain style, he's just saying what he does and shit, and I appreciate that. Okay, so we're gonna load up some Serum here. So I'm gonna load up Drum Rack. So I'm gonna play this out of Drum Rack here, and you can do this in any synth, by the way, and also without Drum Rack. You don't need Drum Rack to do this. What's great when you go and synthesize a drum from scratch is that you can actually tune it to the pitch of your song. So you don't have to go and guess where it is. I also want to bring up one other plugin as well today. And this one is cheating, so I don't really like it as an example. Just because I was told to use it as an example for a while, and people learned nothing at all. Because this is really cheating, but it does give you a lot of really cool stuff to do with it. But yeah, you learn nothing about drum synthesis by using Kick 2. That is truth. Unless you already know drum synthesis, then it actually makes it a little bit more flexible and you can be quick with it. So it's better to start from zero. After all, this is not like a how-to class on how to make Skrillex's kick. This is an entire course about how to make Skrillex's entire Recess album from scratch. Okay, so I loaded Serum in C1 here. So I opened up the I/O. That allows me to see my receive note, which is which pad it's on, the play note, which is the note that the pad plays. So if I was in a key of C, I can tune it to C. If I was in a key of F, G, whatever. But really, the big one is that I can go and tune this down octaves. So now I can just play this pad, and it's always going to be at a low pitch. I don't have to go and repitch the oscillator and do something crazy with it. Also, Serum's oscillators are a little limited with that, so you can't really go and pitch it around too many different octaves unless you want to go and start use coarse pitch. And that's not what you want to do. Okay, so we talked about pitch envelopes and how they modulate things quickly. You strike a surface in order to resonate it. That's the whole concept of physical modeling. So once you kind of, wrap your head around that, you'll be able to apply it to a lot of different things, as people have already. Karpla's strong string synthesis was made in, I think, the mid 1970s, maybe earlier than that. Did you know that when physical audio waveforms lose physical power, they technically are always traveling outward in a higher frequency? So yes, that cymbal is still ringing right now. And everything you say and do gets pushed out into subspace, and people can hear it. Say if they were a light year away and they were able to tap into that band, they could technically listen to you from a light year away, dude. The fuck, dude? All you have to do in order to hear anything is bounce a signal off of it and back at you. That's how geosignaling and imaging works, hence why flat Earth is false. All right, so anyways, I had a whole flat Earth week. Don't at me about that. Okay, so all right. So you can see all the waveforms being generated. Really, at the end of the day, it's modulating a frequency fast and low. So high, low, really quickly. That's all happening over the course of, in the Sound on Sound article, they call it a contour envelope. Yeah, hey. y'all crazy up in here. All right, so yeah, there's a ton of shit to go and make this, and this again can be applied to every single different type of drum, including like concert bass drums, timpanis, toms, whatever you're trying to make. Hence why a TR-808 has all the drums. It doesn't just have kick, snare, hi-hat. It also has toms and a couple other things. Cowbell. All right, so before we get into the actual 909 and 808 theory, 808 theory is actually very general. So it's actually not as complex as the 909. It's one whole number away from 909. I guess 101 numbers. All right, so I'm gonna just use a sine wave. I guess I can use the analog bass drum sign, the one they've deemed good for bass drums. Wow, it's done. Just kidding. I'm playing kick 2. That's why kick 2's cheating. Okay, so I have this sine wave playing at a low F. F's in the chat, and F's in Serum only. F's in my fucking DJ playlist only. I only mix an F. Okay, so step 1 of bass drum is done. I pull down the sustain. That is technically a kick drum. I could just call it the day on that. I don't know if I'm ready for F sharp. Not today. Not in this quarantine. Okay, so I'm gonna add a little release, so it actually has a playthrough to it. In other modes, it's called a one-shot mode. One-shot mode just plays all the way through. So I'm also gonna make it mono, because I don't want it to overlap. So couple things you want to do before you start making a drum. Ideally, you want to be able to just kind of load up this patch and then play it at F0 or around that octave range, and then you can just go and retune this kick. You don't want to have to go and like just know that's around C3 and then just start fucking with it from there, because that I've done it both ways. I don't like it that way. I think that's a waste of time. So let's not waste time. Okay, so now I'm going to create my contour envelope, and I'd say that in quotes because I think it's just a needlessly pretentious word. But I mean, I guess it talks about exactly what it's doing. So it's not just a basic envelope, I guess, like this with an ADSR. It is an attack decay envelope, but it has contour to it. So meaning it's exponential, logarithmic, whichever way you want to bend it. So if we're creating a pitch envelope, we want to first use an envelope. So this is an LFO, so we can turn it in envelope mode. And then we go and drag drop it on the coarse pitch. So oh my god. Y'all wildin'. Alright, so when you're going to modulating pitch, you don't want to do it bipolar. You want to go and make sure it's unipolar. So on Serum Option Shift click, if you click on the little blue icon there, it will pop it unipolar. You can also go on the matrix and click this button. I'll do the same thing. Okay, so modulate that. So now this is going to create click in your kick. So there's pretty much multiple different pieces to every single drum that you have to create. And inside of all those diagrams, that's pretty much what the TR-808 and 909 had to do in order to create the realness, in quotes. Because they also knew that they didn't want it to sound real. You know, that's what they used the 606 and 707 for. And those had their time, you know. You can hear, I believe, the 707 or 606 snare in pretty much every Def Leppard song post-accident with the drummer. And that wasn't meant to be cynical, but it sounded a little bit. But like, yeah, that was like a big sound in the 80s. And so you hear a lot of like, of that vaporwave shit with that. It's like every Torre Moi snare. It's a mixture of 606 and 707. Why? Because those were samplers. Those weren't really synthesizing the sound. And also one like, I guess, secret, I guess, about creating a 909 hi-hat is that it's a sample. So that's that. Figured it out. What makes it unique is the actual, like, I guess, DSP playback that's using. So it's actually degrading a little bit, kind of like the SP1200. And it actually sounds good. Gives it its kind of like mid-range chunk. All right, so modulating the pitch now, making it fast and slow really quick. So now I can just use this rate to speed it up. All right, so higher modulation, more click. So different types of kicks have more of the actual click in it. So like if you're making a psytrance kind of kick, you might want a really, really quick decay. Something like that a little bit. Maybe speed that up a little bit. You can also just go in straight hertz. Okay, so that's kind of step one with just creating the body of the kick. So now you want to run it into a resonator, another resonator. So this is technically the beater head. So this is the beater itself, and then it's striking the head, which is the sine wave generating that low tone, and then the body of the kick. So then we put on a low pass filter, and we can use a self-oscillating filter in order to create another resonance. Or they call it another partial. So this gives you another level to the timbre of it. Also use saturation, kind of poof it up a little bit. All right, so that actually can work just by itself. So I would probably print that just like that. And then also add this guy here. All right, so now this peak that I'm adding into the sound is going to actually expand the mid-range. So if I go and set it to a higher value, which is like above 1K, which is like around here, it's actually going to make the timbre a little bit too high-pitched, and I don't have any information running into the low-pass filter yet that's giving me that type of bounce. So that means a noise oscillator or some other type of complex oscillator, which is kind of like a sawtooth. So sawtooths are used pretty commonly with that. All right, so that gives it more punch. So more decay, more tail, more low end. Now I can add in another harmonic. We can either do a sawtooth, or if we want to just stay in 808 world, go and use the sine wave again. We can pitch this up an octave and start to fill in the gaps in the frequency range here. So notice how these harmonics here aren't defined, just a big chunk. That means that something is modulating really quickly through all of them and just hitting the spectral filter bank that's creating the spectrum here. So we can add an octave up, give it a little bit more low mid-range, and then also assign the same pitch envelope. All right, so if you wanted to go and control each of these envelopes individually, but then wanted to keep one master envelope, we talked about this in Serum class, and this is also in pretty much every other synth as well. But right-click aux source, and you can assign that to a macro. Okay, so can anybody in the chat tell me basically what an auxiliary modulator is doing? Yes, to crunchy drums. It is mixing CV. Changing the scale of modulation, that's also correct. Basically a VCO? Modulating the amount of modulation. So LSV, I think you meant a VCA. Yes. So everybody's right. All right, so this allows me to control each of these pieces individually. So this actually I misassigned here. So let's assign that to, this is filter cutoff. Let's assign it to macro 3. So all my envelopes are off now. And then now I have a mount control. So this one right here, which I believe is 2. Yeah, that's macro 2, so that's B course. Call that overtone. So if I'm gonna go mix some presets that I'm gonna go and sit down and design into a bunch of different kicks with processing and all that, I'm definitely gonna make macros so I can control it really easily. And then once I get kind of my basic macro structure together, I'll save it at one point and start developing more. Okay, so this is the, I guess, main, and then filter. And I'm also going to call this plus envelope, because I'm going to go and assign this now to this knob, which is just level. So it's just going to be a mixer for it. So whenever I turn it up, it gives it more punch, but also turns it up into the mix in general. You can also have it do some other type of wave shaping. If it doesn't want to crash. Shit. I don't remember force quitting that, but whatever you want to say. All right, but yeah, I was just about to add wave shaping onto the overtone oscillator to give it a little bit more, pretty much shift around the harmonics and make it a little bit more of like a sawtooth wave. It's probably going to reset the patch. Yeah, it did. Luckily, I know how to make that pretty quickly. Life is just like, hey, we see you doing something here. Can I just fuck that up for you? All right, Siri, chill out. Siri just over here triggering now. Okay, so did this, did that. Option shift click. And when I'm synthesizing a kick, this is kind of my workflow with it. Shouldn't really take more than a couple minutes to set all this up. It's really just knowing how it all works in order to kind of create the route. And then that should kind of give you your desired effect pretty quickly. All right, so then you got pitch modulation here as well, option shift, and here. And by default on filters, it's going to be unipolar, so I don't need to go and click that. I'm going to make this a little bit more defined than this one. And then right click, map to macro. And then if I want to go and see my other modulation, click back on the LFO, right click, map to macro. Ignore that, a little bit late. All right, so macro 2, and then finally macro 3. All right, so now I'm going to create some more timbre to the click. So I'm going to add a noise oscillator. I can use white noise. Remember, this is all sampled in here too, so it will affect the timbre with pitch. All right. So I'm going to route this here for the moment, but I'm actually going to keep it off because I'm going to add a couple more things to this. All right, so now everything's sunk, envelope, cool, cool. Open this up a little bit more. All right, so I'm in mono mode and I'm adding release to kind of make it a little bit more like a one-shot effect. Also using a sawtooth wave right now. All right, so I want to add this here, and then I'm going to go and save this, just in case Ableton decides to be a little piece of shit. We'll call this kicks. All right, so I'm going to route that through here. On the last patch, I was just routing a straight up sine wave, and I actually wasn't routing it into the filter. All right, I'm also going to create a little limiter here just so I'm not destroying the output. All right, so do you hear that rumble that's in there now? That's kind of ideal just because we want it to sound a little bit more real. You know, if it's just a straight up sine wave, it's going to sound really, really, I guess, noticeable. You know, you don't really want it to pop out in the mix too much, unless you want to do that, unless that's the sound you're going for. All right, so where you put your cutoff on your filter really affects it. So I usually put it around the low pitch of the kick, which should be around about 50 for a F. You can see that right here. It's around 40, actually, 42. All right, so I can center around that because I'm playing a F. I can also go and key track this if I want it to be really sunk. So notice when I click this, it gives me a different number. So the key track number is going to be on the right. So the key tracking off, it's telling me the low note is at 59 and it's equaling 59. But now it's going to equal 42. So I want to shift that down a little bit to around 42, 43. And now when I play it at different notes, it will follow it. All right, so saturation is really going to change this a lot. It's going to add a ton of overtones and shit. Yeah, it'll give us a lower thud to Ori's question, as well as give us a little bit more kind of like body to the sound. So this would actually be a really good kick for like trap. All right, so now I'm actually going to put this white noise straight to the output. And I'm going to add a second filter, because now I'm running these two parallel into filter 1 to the output. Now I'm going to run noise parallel to the filter to the output. I'm going to run both noise and this signal through another filter. All that requires me to do is take off this little button and then add a filter here. So this will be my second filter, which will be a little bit softer, and it'll allow me to create kind of like a higher kind of click sound. And then also, I can control this to actually change, like, I guess the room, but also, I guess, the snappiness of the sound. So now I'm going to control a couple things here. Again, envelope mode, but also its own envelope now. So I'm going to add this envelope to the level. As well as when it's quieter or lower, it's going to make it slower. So just put it bipolar, option click. So when the value is lower, meaning this macro is all the way at the bottom, I want it to be slower. So when it's all the way up at the top, I want it to be fast. So where it was around 6 hertz, around there. So that's chill right there. Just gonna take this off. I want that on macro 4. And then LFO is on here as well. All right, so now I have a little bit of a kind of brightness to my kick. I'm gonna dial that in a little bit more, and then also pull this back. Don't want the range to be too much. So remember, this was affecting the amount of pitch envelope on my filter. So let's name it again. Overtone. This is filter. And then this is noise. All right, so that's kind of a basic way to create a kick patch. And this is pretty much a 808 kick. It also could be considered a 909 as well, because this also has this kind of noise engine in it. So when it's, long and has like an actual like punchy attack, you're gonna have to pull out the decay. Actually gonna add a little bit more of this too. Adds a ton of overtones into it. Let's try wave bending. All right, so I'm gonna add a pitch envelope onto this as well, because now I'm gonna move around the harmonics. Wait, why bipolar and not unipolar? Because when something is on unipolar, this point right here is 0. So if my envelope decays down to this point, then this is negative 100 now. So if this point is 0, then this equals negative 100. So we want this to equal 0, and that's why unipolar. It's called rectification in logic filtering, means only positive values. Okay, so you don't really want any whip, any attack really. If you do have any, you want it to be a quick contour. Then also remember to tune your filters as well. If the filters aren't tuned, it's going to sound a little bit off. Actually, I haven't installed the new Serum update yet. Have it on my computer just sitting there. It's definitely something we can kind of utilize in this. I don't think it's actually relevant for any of the update stuff right now yet, though. Just for this, they'll do some other weird sound design shit with it. Alright, so all the overtones are being controlled by both the filter, the drive of the filter, and the resonance of the decay. So you can create different tones and different styles of kicks by utilizing these pieces, which is, again, pitch envelope resonates sound source. So exciter hits my oscillator, and that oscillator hits a filter. Okay, so now on top of this, Jesus. Serum always takes over my keyboard. So transient designers, there's transient master from Native Instruments, Smack Attack from Waves, or the transient shaper from Kilohertz. These all work. But this is now part of the chain as well. How do you want to shape your final VCA? So when you're doing stuff like this, it's better to go and print it immediately if you want to go and create that type of like transient and make it consistent. I don't use transient shapers on synthesized kicks live because they're not consistent unless they're being triggered from MIDI. As you can just hear it. So the first one works. After that, it starts to kind of lose it. So it sounds pretty cool because it has this nice like weird room to it. It's also a little bit long on its tail though. Want it to decay a little quicker. Cool. All right, so now I want to go and shape this a little bit and then also put it in another room. And this is kind of like all stuff that I would do to create like weird kicks. You know, kicks that I want to sound clean, but also to be in tune with my track, but also have this kind of degree of weirdness to it. Something that kind of takes it out of its own space a little bit. And sometimes I'll use trash. Actually, I'm going to use trash for this right now. But I also use convolution reverb, pretty much whatever does the job. And I'm not going to use trash really. I got the saturated here. But I'm going to use convolver. And I'm going to give it a body. And we can try any of these as well. But the body ones are pretty good for this. So hollow, I like this one. So it spreads it out really, really, really wide. Obviously, we don't want that whole thing there. And I'm also going to turn on some saturation now. That's good. Okay, so kick is wide now. And I'm actually going to make the bass mono and just use the utility to do that.
There came forth.
Oh, all right, Ableton, you're up. It's time to be able to drop the utility into the track today. There you go. Okay, so I just want to get one really good sample of that. Have it limited, not doing too much processing, but enough where I have kind of like a filled out sound. Hold up. Let's enable both. I can also just put in some MIDI. But I also like to print and record while I'm twisting knobs. Maybe change notes. Let's go to C sharp. We'll push this resonance a little bit more. Maybe change this up. Honestly, that Finder didn't used to do it. Ever since this new update, a bunch of Finder shit does not work. That sounds pretty good. Slow this down, stretch it out a little bit. So I'm adding noise into it now. So pretty quickly I can turn this into a tom. Let's try a different waveform in here. So I'm doing all this stuff so you have like it in your mind that you can just start twisting knobs. Now I'm using a sawtooth wave for this. Cool, cool. Glad to see that everybody's having that problem. A little bit of space again. Gonna make it really wide now. Now let's make an impact. Sick. Really do not like this delay. I like it for this shit though. It's kind of the same way I use the delay in Trash. Yeah. You can also do a lot of stuff like that in Saturn as well. Specifically with percussion sound. I really like it for that kind of shit. I'll give out these sounds too. Definitely going to be using that in something. I just got to rename it. All right, so that I wanted to go in on just because I feel like it's really important for you to know the types of envelopes you need to go and make for your drums. So you can't go and just sit down. I guess you can go and do that first step that I was doing, which is literally just going and creating a decay envelope, and that'll do the job. But you know, if you don't, then it's going to be kind of hard to get started with making drums. And I'm sure a lot of you already kind of have that problem, hence why a lot of people are asking about it. All right, so let's now make a snare. Let's talk about snares. And then we'll talk about how to make hats. Too many plugins. Also, you can just do this in anything. I'm going to keep on saying that because it's really not native to a synth or a sampler. It's all about the concepts on how it's being made. Anything can also be in a drum in the real world. That's another thing about sampling. I used to do this in my class, and I would bring, just for the Foley class, like my live class, where people used to come in to a place and sit down together. I don't remember what that looks like anymore, but at one point people did that. Yeah, and I would bring a ton of stuff from my kitchen or whatever, and then I would go and record it and then make a whole beat out of just like, you know, random boxes and Foley sounds and stuff. And that's another way, like if you're, you know, looking for Foley sounds, you're surrounded by them. They're never Never short on fully if it's around you. Honestly, I don't remember what hanging out with people in real life is like anymore. All I do is sit here and design 5-1 music. All right, so now I'm going to make a snare. Okay, so when you tune your snare, again, it can be tuned to whatever your key is going to be. But in this case, you don't really want to do it in the 0 octave. You can do an octave or 2 above it, or even more, depending on how loud you want or how high you want to make your pitch. One thing that I like, and this is also fine-tune to taste however you want to do it. I'm sure no one's giving you like pointers on, unless you, there is stuff out here about how to tune your drums and tune them in key. But for me, I like my snares around a 5th, and sometimes I'll put them at a 7th if I want to kind of be wonky. Thirds kind of weird. They kind of beat with the original sound, but they can sound good. I like closer intervals when the kick is higher in pitch. So like a drum and bass kick. Drum and bass kicks are really really high pitched. They're usually like they could be like a layered amen break or even just straight up 909 samples. The 909 sampler in Ableton is actual 909 samples, so you can actually do a lot with those sounds. And I'm actually going to do something like that at the end here, just to kind of show you how I would kind of utilize that stuff. Because if you want to get really good at making Nero snares, like legit Nero snares, it starts here. It doesn't start with utilizing Superior Drummer. It starts with understanding how to process a drum fully. And a lot of people that are able to synthesize their own Nero snares are doing a lot of this stuff, intentionally or unintentionally. There's a lot of stuff out there from Noisia. They have a lot of stuff on specifically snare sound design, because that's Noisia's agenda is snares. And so Superior Drummer, we'll talk about that next week, and a couple other things kind of like that, and then just talk about resampling stuff. But yeah, like starting from there and knowing how to process that just as it is will allow you to go and synthesize something with the right parts and then go reprocess that the way you would a fully recorded 909 snare. So there's like a ton of different ways to think about it. That's why I really get annoyed with snares specifically, because when I hear like a sample that is just like being abused, kind of like vengeance samples, or it's electro samples and kind of the general vibe with Nero snares right now. It's not like I get annoyed by Nero snares, but it certainly is not creative at this point. So, that's just something that everybody will eventually get kind of dried out on. I don't think any genre is immune to that. I've seen every single genre get annoyed at its snare. Nero snare is the tramp snap of Nero. Yeah, I really like Genghis's snare claps. I use some of his stuff as well. Really, just he uses a lot of trap stuff. Him and Derek share a lot of similar sounds. All right, so it's done. Okay, so first thing is I want to go and create my envelope. So there's a couple ways you can synthesize a snare. I actually want to reference the manual on this one just so you can kind of see like one more perspective on this, and then we're gonna kind of brush through this after. Because if I just went and follow along, I know I'd lose everybody. So I'm just gonna go and apply it, and then we're gonna go and talk about this a little bit more. Let's see, snares. Snares, snares, snares. These are cymbals. This is the snare. Okay, so when using snare drum synthesizers, it pops it into a few different pieces. And those pieces are partials. This is a really, really small diagram, but definitely go to the actual diagram here to kind of check it out. I just brought that up just in case. Yeah, but okay, so we talked a little bit about wave folding, and we're not going to go too deep into that right here. But when it says wave shaper, what it's doing is it's using a sawtooth wave and then subtracting the partials with the wave shaper to create sine waves. So again, that's using two sawtooth waves, running them through wave shapers, and making sine waves. So it's using two different partials, summing them together to the mixer, and then it has a noise generator too. So 3 different summing points. And then a lot of them share contour generators or envelopes. It's 808 on 808 day. Make a wish. Okay, so that's pretty much what's happening here. So we need multiple signals summed together. So that's 3 signals. One for our low tone, one for our mid tone, and then one for our snares. Because the snare itself is called after the metal tie on the bottom that has all those little snares, and they resonate. So we have top head, bottom head, and then snares. So I want to use 2 sine waves. I can use sawtooth waves and then wave shape them both, but in Serum I do not have that option, so I will not do that. But I can also, route 2 sawtooth waves into 2 filters and then subtract the actual harmonics from it. Okay, so I'm just gonna use the analog bass drum sign again. It's done. Okay, so for this one, I actually only want full sustain. Why? Because I'm going to use these envelopes to control these oscillators individually. So I'm going to add envelope 2 to the level and envelope 3 to the level. Can also use the LFOs as envelopes, but just for right now. Okay, so I'm going to turn this down for the now. It's done. I want to make better snares. Sounds like a vacuum. You're gonna learn that today. Shit smacks. I don't even know what y'all saying right now. Just a hodgepodge of thoughts. Okay, so I'm actually gonna get another envelope here because I don't want my snares to just be super loud. But I do want my releases to kind of be lined up. Okay, so we talked about one-shot envelopes. That means it runs by itself. So I just click it once and then it just runs. Want it to be mono, want to have release in order to do that. So I can also control these releases together and do something like that as well. So let's actually open up this spectrum here. so that's my main low pitch. Can also be a little bit lower than this. So F3 is 350 hertz. I can go and shift this to around 200. So let's go F2. It's around here somewhere. Keep on scrolling past it. All right, so now I'm going to go up to a B. Well, let's actually try C, but maybe a third or a fifth, maybe even a. We'll just go with C for now. All right, so that's the basic tone we want. And then this is going to come up as well. And this is going to be a higher pitch. This is going to be kind of like the, I guess, the ping of the snare. Then we add in our noise. All right. Now let's run all of that through a filter. I also forgot one big step, which is the pitch envelopes. So that's going to come right after this. All right, so similar to the way the kick drum is created, but now I'm just resonating these two higher pitched sine waves. Also don't want this overtone to be as loud. I'm gonna get a separate modulator for my noise. I want to add in a little bit more snares into this. And then set this to envelope mode. Step 3, profit. All right, so now that I have our pieces together here, I can go and set this up many different ways. So this is the basic way I can set it up. Gonna need a separate envelope for this. But I want my contour envelope to hook up to this filter cutoff because I'm gonna over resonate like this. Then also have another envelope hooked up to it that holds it up for a little longer. So that's two envelopes hooked up to the filter cutoff, just so I can get the quick ping into it and then go and create the body that opens it up for the snares. Step 2, take another person's snare sample, put an OTT on it, and give it to cymatics. Dude, step 3 after that, success and $1 million the first year of business, dude. Just absolute smartness. Brilliant. Step 4, go and take people's tracks that they didn't approve for you to go and remake and give them out for free as promo. And then step 5, respect of the entire producer community and world at large. Step 6, Nobel Peace Prize. All right, so I'm gonna assign this to my filter of just saying. Just keep it open for a little bit longer. Also run both. Also work on the right patch. God, I hope they did. I hope they entered the group chat. All right, so this has like a ton of this overtone from it. All right, so let's shape this a little bit more. So let's take this low pass off here. We're gonna add it to a later stage. And then I'm gonna add a high pass and a peak. Hey, what's up, Mystery Light? Hope you're not cymatics. Because if so, welcome. We were just talking shit about you. Everyone's looking at you all fucking, judgmental and shit. Just kidding. I don't know who you are, Mystery Light, but welcome. Okay, so now I have kind of a bigger body on this. I want to make my higher peak snap a little bit. So that gives me a lot more body again. And I'm using this envelope to shape my snare, the body of my snare. I want to sound a little bit less like a sine wave. I can shape it, so I can bend it. So I like doing this because it adds a little bit more excitement to the excitement. Does make it sound a little bit more like a sawtooth wave, and I'm not really going for that sound. Although it's going to be buried when I go and sum it together with everything else. All right, so I'm going to try another low pass filter at the end, just to kind of shape those highs a little bit more, and then kind of wrangle in my noise. But also, there's other low passes in here, the French and German. So I can't forget about the Euro boys. So the German LP is a little bit more, I guess, clean. It's for like Berlin style techno kind of stuff. There's more than 3 types of synthesis, Mystery Light, but I think you're talking about FM. But that's like, those are like the three main boys. Those are the guys. You call those guys, all 3 of those guys, if you want shit to get done. Okay, so I want this to shape a little bit more. I'm actually going to try the French. It's a little bit harsher though. Do you want to get a little bit more thwip from it? Okay, so I'm just kind of like fine tuning these now, making them a little bit more clean. All right, sweet. All right, so what I like to do when I go and do this kind of stuff, because envelope 1 is our master envelope controlling our master output, is get these two. It's going to be as long as I want them to be ultimately. Just around there. I don't want this to be too resonant. Also, I want some other overtones in this. It's a bit too clean. So I'm going to throw some undertone modulation into it. All right, cool. And then this is going to be our master length. So I'm going to pull this all the way down. Not too much. Go like right about here. I'll go down all the way to 50 milliseconds because that's about enough. Now I'll push it back up to about 2 seconds, which was around here. This will be decay. Also, gonna save this. Detroted. I meant distorted, but you know, sometimes the light is off in my room and I can barely see my keyboard. All types of noise we can put in here. So the noise is actually one of the cooler things about this, is that we can kind of like layer in these different noise samples, and also like other transients that are in here by default. Attacks, miscellaneous. We have rim shots, snare transients, hi-hat slices. Put in one-shot mode, then it starts to stack it, also doesn't loop it. Earth is an egg. Ovoid king. Alright, that sounds a little bit better right there. Alright, so we got punch. We have no processing yet. So just straight up into this French low pass. Also, the French low pass will clip its own output, so that also can be a desired sound on like respaces. I like it for that. Okay, so what else would I put on here is some type of space verb. Okay. Yeah, that's actually a good question right there too. So let's take a step back. So we talked about what, you know, the TR-909 and 808 are doing in order to create the snare sound, which is two partials, two oscillators. So one is your main body. The other one is the overtone series, or you can say top head, bottom head. And then we have one more parallel oscillator. That's a noise oscillator. So all three of those for the win. So you got to have the noise running parallel. So if you don't have a high pass set and you're running directly into a low pass filter, and this is how they have it set up on the 808, so you can kind of filter the two different partials together and create that third partial from the over resonated cutoff. So that's three partials, three sine waves running parallel to a noise oscillator. So if we're thinking about how it looks like this, or like this, really. So all this stuff, trigger, blah, 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 this is all just from the keyboard. Don't worry about that. Oscillator, wave shaper, this is creating the sine wave, and that runs to its own output, which is the amp. Mixer to amplifier. And so that's where, this is like the basic summed up version, just talking about the oscillators. And then here's the full version that has everything summing together here. So in the 909 specifically, because that's what we're talking about, it has a bunch of different pieces that fit together to make one image, as opposed to 808, where you have those same pieces, but now you're running them through filters and kind of blending them together. So as you can see here, the white noise runs parallel through a high pass filter to the mixer. So what synth would be amazing for this is phase plant. Phase plant is amazing for drum design for this specific reason. I wanted to use Serum because it's a little bit more accessible. It also looks like every other synth too. So you'll be able to see how you make drums in just the regular synth. But inside of phase plant, you can literally recreate this entire routing structure. And with the actual TR909 symbol that I made, pretty much it's that. It's a little bit more complex. Yeah, so that's our basic snare. We have the pitch of the overtone structure right here. So I added a little bit of FM to make it a little more complex. So it wasn't just like a high ping. So it gives us a little bit more squelch, a little bit more pop. Cool. That's a pretty good snare. To this extremely distorted kick. Okay, so that's that. So now again, just to kind of like briefly talk about processing on this, want to go and add some type of transient designer. Let's actually use Smack Attack. It's just so good. I like hard clippers for snares. This kick is just so floppy right now. It's because I fucked with a bunch of controls thinking it was a snare. Yeah. Probably looking at my patch names right now and you're just like, God damn. What was he thinking? This is supposed to be silent. So I'm really digging this snare right now. I'm actually going to use smack attack on my snare as well, and I'm also going to put this at the end of my chain. Sweet. I'm also making the basses mono, so it's a little bit more controlled. Okay. All right, so is there any questions about Yeah, you want to hear mono zoom as meat? That shit is a ridiculous patch. But yeah, ask me any questions about kick and snare drum sound design before we get into hats and then to just the 909s in general. Because what I just ran you through was actually this. I actually showed you how to make this in Serum. So instead of running you through this completely complex description about how an actual TR-909 works, which is 100% beneficial. So this is like a good sit down and like just kind of sit down and read it, just get to know it, I guess. But yeah, without some of this theory, you won't be able to go and think about other, drum sound design kind of vibes. So highly recommend you go and sit down and read it. Can you do the sampler bass? But you said just only drums. Yes, we're doing drums today. What do you think about when deciding what you shape in Serum versus transient shaper? Yeah, so that's actually a really good question, specifically for drums, because there's so many different things I can add into like the pitch envelopes and add more modulation just in general. Once I get the overall sound I want, though, I go and settle on it. And I say, all right, how can I expand this? I like this sound. Let's expand that. So the same concept is when you're talking about engineering stuff and you're recording something, or even just recording in a room. It's like if it sounds good from where you're standing, record it from there. So if the drum sounds good but isn't loud enough, isn't hyped enough, just save the patch, move on, start processing it. If it's not enough, then go back to the patch. Yeah. So J Hunt, if you go in, one of the mods can probably link you to the Discord if you're not part of it yet. You can become a student for free. It's all free, and then you go and you can get access to my outlines, and then you can go and read that stuff. It's also all on soundonsound.com. Highly recommend it. The Discord is invite only for the rest of the month. Okay, so nice. Any more questions before I move on? I'm sure a lot of you are just kind of digesting what's going on with stuff and just how to wrap your head around this stuff. Do you have any ways to make bigger kicks without compression or distortion? So, hi. So that's actually a good question because it's more so about your balancing at that point. So if you were to use a TR-808 or 909 in like a real sense, like the actual module. You'd want to mix everything below it and then kind of have it be the biggest thing in your mix. Just so you can maintain like a not distorted kick and then make it really, you know, live. If you ever wondered how a lot of lo-fi and trap producers get their stuff to look so dynamic as a waveform, maybe even look quiet but then sound super heavy. I don't know if anybody listens to Thook, T-Hook, but his shit's a lot like that. Yeah, and that comes from just good balancing with your mix, having a lot of lows. Yeah, but compression, distortion, we kind of checked it out when here. Distortion is honestly not something you can really work around with a drum because it is integrated into the construction itself. So anytime you go and push gain into any input, you're actually adding saturation or gain staging. In the Serum digital environment, it's not doing that when you just turn up a level, but if you're to use drive, which is literally just turning this up, it's not that it's going and distorting the whole thing, wave shaping it. It's actually using its own input to overdrive itself. So using stuff like that will get you a lot more resonance, as well as using high resonant filters. Yeah, so you don't want to go and like, make it super sharp. So that's a good observation because that is super sharp. So that's why I added this filter at the end here. But also I'm pushing this up pretty hot here as well. So there's many things that kind of like make up the sound here. This peak filter is an extra thing I added. If you're gonna go look at any tutorials, they're probably just gonna leave you off at a high pass filter. So yeah, once you go and start pushing resonance or even input drive, and fat is also another version of that, then you'll start to get more gain before your output stage. So yeah, it's about kind of finding all the pieces and then maximizing what's happening with those pieces. So if you want more snares, figure out a way to extend your noise. If you want more body, figure out a way to get more roundness from the low end. If you're losing your highs because of the roundness you're giving to the low end, then you can try a high pass filter in order to go and use this resonant point to go and move around the low end. Literally make that pop. That's a good question. Any broad strokes, thoughts on what differentiates Chi Nasty Nasty from the rest of the Nero Snare game? Well, I'm not super close to Lee, but I am close to Jasper. And what really just kind of sets them apart is that they know what's going on in a snare. And they know how to add stuff in order to expand the image. I know Chi does a lot of mid-side imaging as well, which again is part of Noisia workflow and theory. Also, if you go and trace back who, say set the bar for dubstep snares, which is like 16-bit Moody Good. 16-bit is Moody Good, by the way, and snare from Skrillex Snare, Snarelex. And all those people, again, Noisia. So Noisia is why Chi and Nasty Nasty sound different. Because they are learning true techniques. They're not learning, like, you might notice a lot of people sound like either of those two dudes. Mostly just Chi, because Chi does have very unique snares. But yeah, there's a lot of different techniques on how to go and create like Nero snares and stuff. One of them being frequency shifting, another one being over resonating from more filters. So I'm just using this filter, but if I go and use a MIDI sunk Fab Filter Volcano, I can get an even more resonant snare. And when we get into 110 stuff, that's when we're going to start expanding on that. and start using all the plugins to go and create shit. Not just one synthesizer, not just one sampler. Because this is the basic shit. 101 is basic. All these 8 classes are supposed to be basic. This is the most basic form of all the stuff that I do in my workflow. And also stuff that I've learned over the years, and then just know how how the schools flow and stuff. So I definitely want to move away from that and start kind of branching off and combining all this stuff together. So processing class is going to get a lot more deep. And then we're going to talk more about theory in audio engineering class. And that's going to expand on harmonic series and eventually lead into music theory. So that's the game plan. But yeah, so like, I don't know, just be unique. Try different layers and stuff. But, you know, if you want to know how those guys are unique, if you want to be as good as Chi or Mefjus at making snares at some point, you're going to have to know the parts of the snare in order to actually maximize those parts. Okay, so now let's talk about some hi-hat stuff. And I'm going to load up Serum again, but I'm also going to load up Faceplant. So I want you guys to see how a 909 hi-hat, not 909, my bad, how an 808 hi-hat is created. Because 808 hi-hats are a little bit more complex, if not completely complex, compared to the actual 909, because again, the 909 is a sample. All right, gonna load on F sharp, and then just so many plugins open right now. Where's Faceplant? Sharp keys are all black keys, so I want those. Okay, so first, let's go and make a like shaker hi-hat kind of vibe. Let's go close down all these. All right, so no oscillator for now. So we can go straight to noise, and this is where you can just go and straight up change the sound of like a percussion sound with just straight up noise. Yeah, Mefjus I think has like a whole thing where he talks about the manifest EP. That's super beneficial. Also, Martin's video, or I think it might be Nick, one of those two dudes has a video on Superior Drummer. Highly recommend that. And then also, just looking up stuff about Superior Drummer, go to a lot of metal videos. If you watch a metal drummer process Superior Drummer, you're going to be very, very good at processing shit. Super loud and really poppy. Okay, so I'm going to go to something, just going to go Aircan. Okay, so talked about how to do this already. So this can or doesn't actually have to be mono, because I can, you know, play this, have a release, and then have it sound a little bit different. All right, so how do I make this sound different every single time? Now I can actually use this thing in my global tab called the K oscillator. So source, modulator, chaos, route it to noise, pitch, and that's going to be bipolar, because now I want it to go up and down around the center point, just by a little. So I want this to actually sample and hold. Okay, so that's going to make it sound a little bit different every single time. Again, it's going to be changed by the type of noise you decide to put in there. Okay, so cymbals, they have a sharp attack because they're being struck. So say if I wanted to make like a hi-hat group where I have two hi-hats kind of chilling, shooting the shit. So this can be my open hi-hat, and this is not done yet. And then this can be my closed hi-hat. So before I go and do that, I'm going to finish this. So I want them to sound the same, but one shorter. So I want to get another sound here that's a little bit inharmonic. So I can use the sine wave again. But I want it to be very high-pitched. And quick. So that little ping is going to be like the bell on a ride. Could even be the sound of the direct contact of stick on metal. If it's a piece of wood, it's probably going to be lower pitched. Kind of like that, but quicker. Like that. So again, still an exciter inside of this. So something's striking a surface. So I'm going to go and expand on that again. Take off BPM on envelope mode quick. And I'm going to excite the coarse tuning again. So unipolar. And then I'm also going to excite the pitch of my sampler. Let's give me some more stick resonance. Appreciate you heading through. Appreciate everybody come through if you came by for most of this, if not all. Okay, so you can hear that little ping there. So when it's a really, really high and sharp sound, it's always metal. When it's higher and sharper than that, it's glass. When it's a little bit lower, but sounds like a wood block, it's going to be wood because it sounds like a wood block. So that sound right there is wood. That's also wood. But this is going to be a larger actual wood block now. So again, I don't want it to be long. I want it to be really quick. Or else it starts to get a tone. Which can be cool. Say if I'm making a triangle. That can be actually really cool. Okay, so that's running. So I can do a couple different things here. So we'll do a high pass. So we want to high pass everything. High pass, and then you can also high pass with peak again. So we want to run the noise through here. So this gives us a lot of our timbre for the actual like hi-hat sound. So because we have this kind of, I guess, well, not sharp, but 12 dB per octave slope, it's not going to be that cut off, so we can add on to it if we want to go and add some more, I guess, subtraction from the lows. We can just use the EQ straight up for that. Okay, so all those impacts, exciting shit, bro. We can also try comb filtering it. Comb filters are really cool for making metallic sounds. So flange, use any of the flangers, comb L6, comb HL6. plus minus. Fuck it, dude. If you're feeling really saucy, use a phase 48 HL6 minus, bro. I don't know. So I just need a little bit of resonance on there. So hold it down, it's closed. Tap it, it's open. So this is, again, using noise to create a hi-hat. But the TR-808 does not use a noise sample to make its hi-hats. So we're going to check out how it actually does that in a second here. But yeah, try any of this stuff out. Really cool. Let's go to that next patch. Oh man. Why doth you scroll all the way to the top? So that's changing up every single time. Remember, I put the K oscillator on there, so that's going to sound a little bit different. I'm going to scroll through these, listen to different hi-hats. They're like paper bags and Foley sounds. Spray paint can's really good. AC hum. Actual hi-hats. But yeah, here's the regular one. Use some pink noise. Pink noise gang, represent. Add a little bit of this contour envelope to our low pass or high pass filter. Notice I'm moving it upwards because I don't want it to open it up for lows. I wanted to use that as kind of a low ping. This is also another way to make snares. Where's this Schmidt preset? Pretty sure I have it. All right, so we got all the fixins. Let's get a little bit more resonance on this pup. This puppo. Perfect. All right, so that's one of my hi-hats, and this is my other one. And this one is going to be, I don't know what just happened here. Huh? What just happened? This shit just glitched out so hard. That's so weird. I've never seen that happen before. It just like printed a sync wave. I don't even know how that's possible. Okay, so this one has longer resonance. This is my open hat. So I'm going to put these two into a choke group. Choke group 1. All right. So when I tap it, I do not want to hear anything else. Sweet. Okay, so now I'm going to add this guy in here. This is going to be where we're going to end off for today. So this is now getting into the actual construction of this, because there is another section just about noise synthesis in here. I wanted to show you how to make noise hats and stuff. Probably the most applicable because you can just literally put in any different noise sample and then just turn it into a percussion sound. And you should really be thinking about top loops kind of like that. Like, what else can I just try to throw in there? How will that sound? But yeah, okay, so checking this out here, let's go to the game tape. Okay, so looking at this, we have 6 oscillators of square, 6 square waves. Those get put into one mixer, summed, and then split into 2 filter chains. And then that filter chain gets split in 2 on the highs, so mid and high frequency components. And then we have our low frequency components, which are split by another bandpass filter, and then to the output with the high pass filter. And then controllable mixer, that's pretty much tone control, I guess, if you're gonna control like a filter or anything else that's controlling the length of any of the contour envelopes. All right, so 6 square wave oscillators summed into one mixer in order to create this actual symbol. It's weird. So what is it doing? Well, to start, it is summing all those square waves. So that is something it's definitely doing. So let's load one of these presets I got here, just so I don't have to go and sit down and create that whole thing. Okay, so this is what the pouch should kind of look like. It's a little bit complex just for a symbol, but it is doing what it's supposed to be doing. So I have, just like it was in here, 3 routes. One summing, one gets sent to a bandpass filter. That bandpass filter gets split into 2 high pass filter, and then one bandpass filter gets split to a high pass filter as well. So my lanes here are my high pass filter stages, and I added some other stuff just for me. That's just for me. But here's our main oscillator. So what did I do? What did I do? It looks random. It looks crazy. So these were square waves. They were all square waves to start out with. And I can kind of bring it back to 0 in a second here, and we can kind of like end off with that. But this should sound loud. Let me just turn this down. what's happening here is I'm actually triggering all of these square waves to self-modulate each other and create like an FM signal. So that is the cymbal. I can pitch this around to a lot of different pitches here, and it will sound more and more inharmonic. So cymbals aren't tuned to a perfect pitch. They can be if you want them to sound like they're tuned, because there are different percussion instruments that are tuned, like kalimbas, whatever. But this should be random. So what I did to start out with was, we'll take out all these, and then create analog oscillators. So they all got to run to one output. I send this directly. This is being patched as an aux here. This is why I didn't use faceplant today. I wanted to, I just know it'd just be way too much. So 6 is really just for them. This is what they were able to do and how they're able to repitch these square waves. That's very unclear inside of that actual description and the sound on sound documentation on what pitch these should be at. But what you do have to do is kind of throw that out and not even think about what pitch it should be at, but think about how a cymbal actually resonates. It's not going to perfectly resonate with like a square wave like that. It's not going to sound like that, and it shouldn't. If it does, it's wrong. So what it should be doing is it should be self-modulating, creating inharmonic tones. Square waves are good because they're only odd harmonics. So it's really clean. Sawtooth waves tend to over-modulate because it's all the harmonics. No, I don't know, Ori. All right, so what I did here is I patched this out for my low band right here, where I have another bandpass filter. So remember how it said sum 1 to bandpass filter, and then patch that one bandpass filter to 2 places. And then patch one bandpass filter to 1 place, which this is my lows. This is my low filter right here, because this goes and gets the output of all these guys, sends it into this output here. Output's not going anywhere. Output goes directly into this filter and goes down to my output here. So because the output's not going anywhere, I can patch directly here. This is what I did for this module, and we'll just delete this so you can see how it works. So auxiliary, that's a command click, hit aux. It should look like this from default. How do you plug it in? No clue, bruv. So I want this patch just like this. So I want it to go from my mixer. I want it to go into a bandpass filter, into another bandpass filter. So that means it's going directly into a bandpass filter. It can't be bandpass filter into another one. So that means I need to patch it out right before it. So that's why I have this envelope here. So I click this output here, then I hit this button, hit plus. And that's how that works. Really, really, really simple, really, really dope. It's hard patching the output of this mixer into this input here, allowing me to go and process it with another group. All right, so still it's a square wave. So now I need to go and pitch these guys around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more. One more for good luck. All right, so this can be somewhat random. Harmonic is going to shift it around the harmonic series. Sync is going to speed it up. based on its own phase, because it's emulating sync oscillation here, so it's actually syncing to anything. So you can kind of be random with it. Good place to start with some of your main, like, I guess, timbral oscillators here, the ones that aren't going to sound super random. I keep them in increments of 4 to 8 octave ranges, pretty much, multiples of 2. So I might have only 2 of these oscillators be around that range, so I'm going to have this one be at 2 as well. And then I'm going to start sending phase modulation to different places. I'm going to send this way up, and I'm going to offset it. So I want this one to be inharmonic. Inharmonic meaning at a random pitch, something that's going to sound dissonant. And then I'm going to patch it in to phase modulate other sounds. And then I can cross modulate. So if I wanted to go from here into here, and then patch the output from there into here. So this is my first modulator, carries it here, then it carries it here. I can go patch it back, create a feedback loop. Now it starts to become really noisy. This is what we want because we want it to sound a little bit more random. So we don't want pure tones. We want to create some degree of randomness in here. So it creates noise. So the square wave tone, though, gives it that clarity, gives it a little bit of structure to it. So I'm going to get that feedback loop and just patch it into here so we can get some crazy noise, and then you can experiment with directions here, undertone modulation or overtone. And I'm just being really specific right now. If you're confused on what's going on here, you can, this is literally the end of the class, so you can come back to it. All right, so now we're getting back to where it was before. It's going to be really shrill. I apologize. All right, so I'm still getting some tone in there, and I want to get that out. There is one more tone floating around. Cool. All right, so a lot of this stuff is, you know, cross-modulating now. I can try different increments here. I can even try patching stuff all the way back to the beginning. I'm getting something really, really just over-modulated now. So this creates noise. Again, I only made one of these oscillators in harmonic, and I started cross-modulating. And then a little bit of spatial, you know, delays and stuff. Okay, so that's pretty much a 909 crash. In my opinion, it sounds a little bit more clean because tend to sound really, really like perfectly resonant, I guess. And I like a little bit more randomness to the like actual crash sounds. And this can actually be a China cymbal too. If anybody knows what a China cymbal is. So again, same type of envelopes, quick contour. What's this patched to? Cutoff point of all the cutoffs. Every single cutoff is just patched to this one envelope. And then I have my envelopes here literally just controlling my decay. With release mostly. But yeah, that sounds pretty good. Sounds clean. Another thing you can do, and this is kind of an extra thing, is vocode. So filter banks are pretty crucial to sound design in general for a lot of different things. This is one of them. So on this, I'm just going to parallel it for now. It's going to be off for the moment. I'm going to pull back the bandwidth. And I'm going to use this as a modulator now because I am filtering noise. Give it a little bit more of a chainy sound. Okay. All right. So yeah, so that should get you started with like creating your own drums and stuff and get you onto sampling your own drums world. I feel like that's more beneficial than me just showing you how to use battery because that just keeps people using samples. It should be thank you, Bass Gamut. Oh, let's talk. Hit me in my DMs and we'll work it out. Shit's pretty crazy right now, so it's really hard for me to kind of do sets, but yeah, hit me up. Okay, so that's kind of it for today. But yeah, you have this whole outline to read through just to, kind of digest so you have something to kind of guide you through sampling. So everything I did here, this is sampling. This is resampling. This is the beginning of resampling, I guess. If anybody hasn't seen this process done, this is super common. Sounds pretty cool. I like it. Chunky. All right, so that's going to be it for today. Do you guys want this like serum patch? I can, not serum patch, but the serum sample drum rack thing. I can also link that out. Serum kit with a touch of faceplant, mate. It's just a little fucking faceplant in there. Just fucking shit up, man. Fuck it. Okay, so yeah, that's it for today. Thanks for everybody for coming by. So we had like 20 people in here at one point. That was nice. Where's my samples? Where are my samples? And you know what? I'm gonna bring back Reese Wednesday, and that is starting up. So that is coming back